And welcome back to another Ableton tutorial. Lovely to have you here. Big shout out YouTube gang, big shout out Patreon gang. So what are we looking at today? Let's dive straight into it. Well, today we're going to look at how to turn this into this. Or perhaps into this. Some kind of dying version of Mary Had a Little Lamb. So, first of all, I'm going to break down these three instruments here. If you want to jump straight to how to make this, time codes are in the description below. But let's have a quick look at this instrument, at what's happening. So let's take this one. These three are the same. Just using different kinds of mallets. So this one is a soft mallet instrument. Let's return it to the default settings, and let's listen to sort of what is happening with this. I'm going to make sure the input is coming from my computer keyboard. All the generative stuff is turned off. So I'm just using my computer keyboard to play the notes now. So we have two sets of controls over here on the right. We've got controls to do with the sound of the samples themselves, and here we've got some controls to do with post-processing. So on the sound of the samples, we can control the start, attack, decay, sustain, release, all fairly standard. Volume to velocity, so the harder the velocity, the louder the note is, we can control that. Filter cutoff, and velocity to filter cutoff, so that the high velocity notes open the filter a bit more. We can turn a loop on and get some sort of weird, nice, glitchy effects happening in the background there. We can transpose everything up and down. Transpose the samples. We've got volume control for the samples. We can add a bit of waviness, and we can randomly pan the samples, which is really nice. So then over here we can control a bunch of stuff to do with post-processing. So a master out, that's fairly obvious. We have a tremolo and the rate of the tremolo. We've got a grain delay, adding some sort of sprinkly octave stuff, a high pass and a low pass filter, reverb, and a reverb decay. We can humanize the timing. This is my MIDI humanization rack. That's on a previous tutorial. Link in the description below if you want to grab that. We can. We've got a reversing thing happening in here. So if I turn the reverse all the way up and the chance all the way up, everything is getting reversed, and there's a rate at which things are getting reversed as well. Let's turn that back down. And we have sort of some drive, some distortion, which is really nice when we start playing a bunch of notes together. We get some crunchy overtones happening there. And there's a freeze. And a sensitivity on the freeze as well. So all sorts of cool stuff. I made a few presets here. So select. It's kind of a little bit eerie, some singing bells. So that's how the instrument works. There's similar versions here just done with different mallets, wooden mallets and hard mallets. Patreon members, I have a new tier on my Patreon. Here, I made an entry-level tier. So members on this tier will be able to download one of those three instruments along with all of the samples, and that's just €3 per month. Members on the full tier, which is €8 per month, can of course download all three of these instruments and the samples contained therein. The support over there really does helps me keep making stuff like this. Advertisement over. Right, let's jump into it. How are we going to make this? So I'm going to talk us through the process of going from this to what you just heard, playable, performable instruments that we can use in our musicking. So I'm using a glockenspiel here. This is a glockenspiel that I've had since I was around 5 years old. It's been around the world with me several times, and it's got It's got a really nice, sprinkly, summery, sparky sound. Don't have to use a glockenspiel. You can use any instrument you like. I've got some nice microphones. You can use your phone microphone for this. It doesn't matter. You're going to get interesting results either way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record some of these notes, and I'm going to start with the note G, the lowest note. And I'm going to record 8 individual hits on that note. The reason I'm doing 8 individual hits, and I'm going to try and make these hits as consistent as possible, is the consistency is so that we have a consistency of sound across the whole thing. But the reason I'm doing 8 of them is because no matter how consistent I try and make it, it's going to sound slightly different every time. And being able to sort of switch randomly between those 8 samples is going to make it feel a lot more organic. It's going to make it feel a lot more like a human is playing it. You don't have to do 8. I'd suggest for this technique at least 4 individual samples. You can go up to 16. You can go up to, I think, 128, actually, the technique that we're going to use. This is a technique called round robining, is I think the technical term in the sample-based instrument community. So I'm going to record 8 individual hits of that note G as consistently as possible. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm not going to do it on every single note. The next note I'm going to do is actually going to be this B flat here. And the reason I'm going to do that, it's maybe a bit more in camera if I demonstrate here, is this G. If I shift that up by 1 semitone, I get this G sharp. And this B flat, if I shift that down by 1 semitone, I get this A. Ooh. And so what that means is that if I record every third note, simply by shifting one of these up and down by just transposing the sample by 1 semitone, we're able to fill out the whole keyboard. So it's a third less work, basically. And when you're chopping 8 individual hits per note, that can mean a lot. You don't have to do it this way. You can do all of them. You could just do octaves. A lot of sample-based instruments just sample the octaves. It's really up to you how much editing you want to do. Because what happens next, we record 8 individual hits of these individual notes. I then go and treat those a little bit. I add some EQ and some compression just to make it sound nice, to deal with any of the harshness in the sound, perhaps take off some of the bottom end that's not really needed on a glockenspiel like this, and to compress it to really control the transients. I get it sounding nice the way I would if it was in a pop song that I was producing or something like that. So I get it just sounding nice and clean with no other processing on it. And then I export each of those samples individually. And you can see here that I've done that for the 3 different mallets. I said I was going to prepare some stuff earlier. This is some stuff I prepared earlier. So on each of these mallets, on each of these, every third note, I've got 8 individual hits. So this is wooden mallet. The note is D4. The note is D flat 4, and this is hit number 1. Wooden mallet, D flat 4, hit number 2. Wooden mallet, D flat 5, hit number 3. Right. So there's a lot of exporting that happens there. It's a very meditative process. And you can see I got quite into it when I was preparing this tutorial and making these instruments. I like doing that kind of thing. So we're going to imagine that you've done this. You've done some recording of your instrument, you've EQ'd it, you've compressed it, you've got it sounding nice, and you've exported and labeled all of your individual samples like this as closely as possible. So we're going to start with a new instrument. I'm going to bring in a simpler. We're going to go instruments, simpler, and I'm just going to drag that over into the empty space over here. I'm going to come back to my samples here, and I'm going to start with the lowest note, which is G3. And I'm just going to drag that into the simpler there. I'm already going to turn off retrigger. I'm going to turn off snap. And that's all I'm going to do for now. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to turn it into an instrument rack by pressing Command G. Lovely. I'm going to open up the rack chains here and I'm going to drag the rest of these G4 samples in there all at once. There we go. Okay, so now on all the rest of these, I'm going to turn off snap and retrigger. I'm going to turn off snap and retrigger. These are not essential things that you have to do. It just changes the way the samples are played a little bit. Perhaps you want these on. It can also give you cool and interesting results. I'm trying to make an instrument that plays as naturally as possible, which is why I'm turning off snap and retrigger. Okay, so now I have my instrument here. I'm going to turn this on for now. It's just, well, let's turn everything else off for now. So I can use my MIDI, my computer keyboard, and you can hear it's triggering all of those samples at once. This was, oh, I didn't start at G3, I started at G4. Okay, that's not a problem. That's easy to fix. So I'm now going to create a situation where each time this receives a MIDI note, it's going to randomly pick one of these 8 samples. So I'm going to use a MIDI effect, and we're going to use expression control in here. Lovely. Now I'm going to use the chain selector to do this. So I'm going to hit the chain selector here. I'm going to drag all of these out so they are distributed evenly from 0 through to 7. That's for our 8 individual samples. And the way the chain selector works, if you haven't come across it before, it only allows the sample when this light blue line is above the blue line that the sample is connected with. Wow, I just described that really, really badly. But now when I play a note, you can see it's only coming out of this first sample here. I moved this, and now it's only playing the 7th sample, and it's really high and piercing. I'm sorry. Let's fix that quickly. So I'm going to right-click on that, and I'm going to map that to macro 16. Open up all of the macro settings here, and I'm going to go here. We're going to select the first one, change from velocity to random. Yes, we only want it going unipolar. We want it going 100%, and we want it 100% random. I'm now going to map that to the chain selector here, and you can see, flip, this is now zipped all the way over down here where there's no samples, so we're not getting any sound coming through when I press. So I'm going to constrain the range of this. I'm going to press map, and we're going to make this go from not from 0 to 127, but just from 0 to 7. So now each press gets a new note, gets a new a randomly chosen one of these 8 samples. So I'm going to now turn all of that into a group. We're going to press select it all and press Command G. Going to open up the macro settings here. We're going to need those, and we're going to open up the chain selector settings here. And so this is the note G4. So I'm going to use the key selector here to just say we only want this to play when notes from, and if you remember the video, from F sharp 4, G4 and G sharp 4. So I'm going to bring this up so it goes to F sharp 4, G4 and G sharp 4 like that. Now it's playing it so high because on my MIDI keyboard I'm playing a note that's all the way up here in order to find it. Let's find the note. There it is, exactly. So that's 1.5 octaves above C. So I need to make this playback at the pitch it was recorded, and using Simpler always plays back with C3 being the originally recorded pitch. So I want to pretend, somehow tell Ableton, when I'm playing this note, G4, I want it to send a C3 through to the Simpler. So I'm going to use a pitch device. And to get from this G4 down to C3, it was minus 17. There we go. That's now playing it back at the pitch that I recorded it at. Is that correct? I'm just going to check that with an operator. Instruments, operator, turn that on. No, we're too high. It needs to go down 19. There we go. So that's now playing back at concert pitch, or recorded pitch. Can delete that operator. Right, okay. So I've named that G4. And now I'm going to do some mapping from these simplers onto some of the macros over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is map the sample start. I'm going to right-click sample start, map to macro 1, and I'm going to right-click and map that to all siblings. The next thing I'm going to do is the attack, decay, sustain, release, map to macro 2, map to all siblings, decay, map to macro 3, map to all siblings, sustain, map to macro 4, map to all siblings, lovely, and release, map to macro 5. To all siblings, really nice. Okay, now I'm going to also do the volume to velocity. You saw that as I was showing the instruments, so we're going to map to that to macro 6. Map to all siblings, filter cutoff, map to macro 7. Map to all siblings, and the velocity to filter, map to macro 8. Map to all siblings. Going to come back to the sample, map the loop on and off, map to macro 9, map to all siblings. Sample length, that's going to be fun to play with, map to macro 10. Map to all siblings. Loop length is going to be fun. Map to macro 11. To all siblings. And I think already I'm going to constrain the range of that because that we don't need that loops happening all the way up here. There's sort of no sound there. So let's sample loop length. Let's change that from 10%. Lovely. Actually, let's make it 20. Lovely. That gives us quite a bit of control over that. Next, what are we going to map? We're going to map. Let's make a volume. So the volume here, map to macro 12, map to all siblings. Let's do something with the LFO. So if I come in here into controls and let's map this to macro 13. Map to all siblings. Let's check how that's sounding when I turn that up. Maybe a bit faster. Oh, that's not doing it. Copy value to all siblings. Actually, let's just set that to be 8th, 16th notes. Copy value to all siblings. Copy value to all siblings. There we go. So yeah, now we can get a little bit of waviness into the note. That's fun. Random panning. That's back over here in controls. Right click, map to macro. Map to macro. Let's do that to macro 15. And a transpose. Let's do a transpose. So transpose. Right click, map to macro 14. To all siblings. Okay, cool. So now, all of these things are being mapped to all the siblings. Some release so we can. Yeah, that's nice. Nice. Okay, super nice. Right. So now I've turned this is my note, G4. I've done some mapping on the instrument rack. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to duplicate that, Command D. And we're going to drag and drop, replace all of the samples. The reason I'm doing it like this is so that I don't have to redo all of this mapping. You saw there's a bit of mapping involved in this. This tutorial does involve some repetitive tasks. Apologies for that. I find them quite meditative. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to replace the sample G4 one with B flat one. And I'm going to do that for all of these. B flat 2, B flat 3. B flat 4, and there are 2 more steps to this. If you're wanting to sort of quickly skip through me doing this, just watch out for the next couple of steps for this duplicating, replacing samples process. 7 and then B flat 8. That's done. Right, now the 2 more steps. I move this range because we want this to be playing the notes A, B flat, and B. So now when I play those notes, it's not quite back at the concert pitch again. So what I need to use this MIDI pitch device and change that another -3 semitones. So we now have those new samples. They're now in key. So let's rename this. So I now need to repeat this process for all of the samples, which is going to take a little while. So here's one I prepared earlier. So this is, I've done exactly the same thing, but I now have all of the notes from, that's too low. Oh, we're on this one. We want, mute that one on this one, please. Yeah. So I now have all of the notes from G3 all the way through to G5, all spread out exactly how we did before. You just saw it. You just saw it. Right. So now I have these notes, this rack, or these many racks, these 9 racks are my actual notes. But this rack now is my main instrument. So I'm going to rename that. And actually all of these macros in here, I want to be able to control those for all of these individual racks. So I'm going to open up these macros. We're going to want all of them. And I'm just going to map all of these across. Map to macro 1. Map to all siblings. Map to macro 2. Map to all siblings. You can probably fast forward through this bit. Or maybe you're doing it along with me. And me counting through is actually quite helpful. Map to all siblings. Maybe using this to fall asleep. Oop, undo, map that to the wrong one. map to macro 5, map to all siblings. So now I've mapped all of those things across. I didn't map the chain selector because that's being controlled by the expression control here, and I don't want to fudge with that. So I can now actually close all of this. So I'm going to close that. We can hide this, and we're going to close this. This is now my instrument. And I can control all of these things. The sample start, attack, and some nice release on this. Let's add some random panning. So already we have this nice situation happening. But now when we start adding some post-processing is where this gets really interesting. So already I'm going to begin by adding a limiter in here. So audio effects limiter. We don't want to blow up the world. Lovely. And now I can turn this into a new rack. So I'm going to press Command G, turn that into a rack. So I can add some processing in here, and I can now use these macros to control that post-processing. So what are we going to do? Well, first of all, I'm going to create a little generative bunch of sounds happening so that I can think about the post-processing. So I'm going to go into MIDI effects, and I'm going to use Ableton's bouncy notes MIDI device. I'm going to bring that in here. This is a cool little device for just generating a bunch of sounds nice and quickly. I want it on auto. There we go. So you can see every time a note lands over here, we're getting a note. These notes are unmapped on the key selectors here. Well, not in those key selectors, the other key selectors. So that's why we're not hearing anything down here. This is nice. This is going to help us control some stuff. So let's get these back to some kind of default settings. Let's turn the volume up a little bit. And I'm already going to add a scale device in here. Let's bring a scale in. And it can just be C major for now. I think that's nice whilst we sort some stuff out. Cool. Let's add a bit more on the release though. So we can hear that this bouncy notes is also generating quite short notes. The notes are sort of cutting off. So I'm actually also going to bring in here a note length. And I'm just going to add a bit of length to that. It's still cutting off. Why is it cutting off? Oh, because the sample loop, the sample length is way short. There we go. Now we're getting everything ringing out nice and lovely. Okay, so let's do some post-processing. I think some kind of tremolo is going to be nice. So let's bring that in. Let's use an audio effect. We're going to use a utility. And we're going to use an LFO. And I'm going to make the LFO go minus 50% because it's going to go down from here. So now, and I'm going to make that go one direction. So now, lovely. And then this is our depth. And we have the rate here. So let's leave the rate on free. Actually, I want to now group all of that. Command G. Let's rename that. Tremolo rack. I'm going to just use two macros here. We're going to have the depth map to macro 1, and we're going to have the rate map to macro 2. That rack I'm going to drag actually inside our main rack over here. So now I'm going to map that. Actually, I'm going to map that to macro 3. I'm going to save macro 1 for sort of a master volume, and map to macro 3 over here. So now on our rack over here, yeah. Let's just rename those. Tremolo depth and tremolo rate. Nice. Okay. Right. Let's add a grain delay after that. I think that would be nice. So where's it gone? Grain delay. We're going to drag that in just in here, just after the tremolo rack. We're going to set pitch 12, so it's always doing octaves. Some feedback. Yeah, and we're going to map that to macro 4, which is then the grain delay dry wet. Okay, Now let's add a filter. I think a high pass and low pass filter is going to be nice. So let's use an EQ to do that. EQ8. I'm going to put that in here. Set that to there. I'm going to map that to macro 6, and this we're going to make that quite a hard. No, let's leave that soft. And let's map this, and we're going to map you to macro 5. So we're going to come back and rename these. So now, yeah, nice. A high pass and a low pass filter. Okay, now let's add some more stuff. Let's add a raw. Let's add a raw in here so we can get some kind of cool kind of distortion-y effects. Just going to put this in single mode. Going to add another. Where's my limiter gone? You should be at the end of the whole thing. We don't want to blow things up. Cool. Let's take that tremolo off for now so we can hear what's going on. Nice. Maybe I'm going to make this tube preamp. And I'm going to connect both this amount and this with one macro. So let's map that to macro 7. This also to macro, where's it gone? Shaper amount. So this is going to be our raw. Let's come back over here and change these ranges. So macro 7, the raw depth, shaper amount. Let's leave you going till there. So, and let's rename that. Yeah, cool. That's really nice. I'm just going to build a little dynamic EQ in here. I think that's going to be helpful. I don't want to control any stuff on it, but let's build a little dynamic EQ so that when it's these really sort of piercing sounds, it takes them off. Let's turn the drive down for now, though. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to isolate those piercing sounds. I'm going to bring in an EQ8 in before the limiter here. And so I'm going to set this to be a really fine band. Something like this. Yeah, so that whenever it's these really piercing sounds, and we're going to use the volume of this to control an EQ. So I'm going to bring in a multiband. No, not a multiband dynamics. Calm down. An envelope follower is what I want. An envelope follower in here. Going to adjust the gain on this so that we're getting a lot of information. There we go. And then I'm going to actually put a utility after this and mute it, because all we want this chain for is to give us this information. We don't want this coming out of the master. So I'm going to bring the gain down to 0, select all of that, group it, Command G, and under here is where I'm going to bring the EQ that EQ is going to control. So we're going to bring in an EQ8. We're going to set this band number 3. It's on those piercing levels. And now I'm going to select this envelope follower. We're going to go minus 100%. We're going to go one direction. I'm going to map that to the gain of that EQ3. Yeah. So we can now see this really ducking down when the sounds are piercing. It's maybe doing it a bit too much. And let's give it a little bit of... So it's not quite doing it quite so drastically. Nice. Okay, that's controlling those sounds a bit. That's the high controlling this EQ. You could add a low band if you wanted to add a dynamic EQ, all controlling individual bands on this EQ. You can build your own dynamic EQ. Maybe I'll do a separate tutorial about that. Okay, dynamic EQ, that's quite nice. Let's bring in a spectral time so we can sort of freeze time. Going to turn delay off. Going to turn retrigger on with onsets and freeze. Yes. Let's make the resolution high. Yeah, let's map that to macro 8. So now this is freeze, dry, wet. Cool. Let's add a reverb. I think a reverb next is going to be nice. No, I'm going to move this tremolo rack later in the chain, actually. Yeah, and actually I'm going to bring the reverb even before it so that it can tremolo the reverb and the spectral time. So we can have both frozen sounds and some tremolo on that. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, now reverb. Let's do a dry wet, map to macro 9, and let's do a decay, map to macro 10. Let's rename these. Verb decay. Lovely. Okay, let's bring in some humanization in here. So I'm going to bring in my humanizing rack, and I want that to be in front of all of these main instruments. Can I do that now? No. Yes, I can. I want it to be in here. So I'm going to bring in my humanizer rack, MIDI racks, Theo humanizer. So what this does is it adds a little bit of randomness to the timing and also a bit of randomness to the velocity, so that, yeah, things can seem a little bit more human if you're using arpeggiators and stuff. It can really help. So let's map that to macro 11, map that to macro 12. Right, let's add a reverse, a little pitch hacky thing, and let's put that after the tremolo. So I'm going to go to audio effects. We're going to bring in pitch hack. Going to put that in here. So we have recycle. We don't want to do any recycling. We just want to use this possibility of reverse. So we want these three things: rate, reverse, and dry wet. So map you to macro 13, map you to macro 14, map you to macro 15. Let's come in and label these. Reverse, dry, wet. Reverse chance. Reverse rate. So now the chance is 100%, dry, wet, and now it. Yeah, we're getting that's nice. Okay, bring that back down. Okay, what else do we want to add to this? Let's add the master out. Yeah, that's a good idea. We've got a macro for the master out. Let's add it. So I'm going to add that in here, in before the limiter. So let's bring in a utility. And I'm going to map that to macro 1. And in this case, I'm going to make it go a little bit higher than 0, because we have the limiter after that, so it's never going to get too out of hand. So that's the gain here, and the gain, let's just make it go to 10. Every now and then, if we're starting the sample not quite right at the start, maybe we want just a little bit more gain available to us. And the limiter is going to take control, take over if things get too out of control. Okay. So we have one more macro here. We could add one more effect. But you see how this has come together. So I'm just using a generative system to generate the notes coming in here and doing some stuff with the note length and the scale in here. Actually, maybe I'm going to drag this note length into this rack and also the scale, because they're going to be handy to have available anytime I load the rack. There we go. So then I just did some color coding on here to make things consistent, so I could see like all the things to do with the velocity, attack, decay, sustain, release together, etc., etc. So that's the rack. That's how it works. It's I think super nice, super interesting to explore. If I mute this bouncy balls effect, and now I'm going to receive MIDI from all inputs. So yeah, I'm now able to play that with my computer keyboard, using my computer keyboard as a MIDI keyboard. We could have, of course, add some more sort of randomization to the start time and the attack, decay, sustain, release stuff, using expression controls and all that kind of stuff in here. Oh, I love that note is just kind of hanging around. That's super nice. And that freeze is also really hanging around. That's really nice. Okay, so that's the rack. Really nice to explore this stuff with you. Would love to hear anything that you guys make with this rack, multi-sampling your own instruments. There is a thread over here in the community section in my Patreon page. You can post your own tunes, and I love listening to and giving some feedback on those things. So if that's the kind of thing you want to do, please get involved. Thank you so much for joining. This was a wonderful way to spend a really hot, sticky, sweaty afternoon. Till next time.